America is growing at an unprecedented rate. Capitalists are gradually showing their enormous power and assets that once amounted to trillions of dollars. What is the word value today? We have a railway connecting all parts of the country, distributing goods from the East Coast to the West Coast quickly. Kerosene brings clean and safe light, lighting up houses in the dark, a magical light that few people can think of. However, the marketplace is a battlefield. Even if you don't sell the same products, competition still exists. Only the strongest deserve to survive. However, competition is also the driving force of development, and that is always necessary. So who survived and who was destroyed? How can capitalist bosses build huge empires despite all efforts to resist and sabotage? We will continue part 2 of the series Big Capital and the Power of Money now to find out. Episode 2, Compete or Be Destroyed. In the previous episode, we learned that Keege needs to build a bridge across the Mississippi River, and the biggest difficulty is finding the required materials to support it. In those days, iron was very rare. It was only used to produce small objects such as forks, knives, and decorations. Until then, no one had ever used iron to build large structures until this man changed everything. British inventor Henry Baymer created a device that shortened the production time for a single steel line from 2 weeks to 15 minutes. Investors understand the role of new technology and begin to apply it. With steel in hand, Carnegie was able to begin building the great bridge he desired. At age 33, Andrew Carnegie was ready to tackle the impossible. Building the first major bridge across the Mississippi River seemed impossible to connect the United States, but the decision to use steel showed Carnegie the cost. After 2 years of planning, Carnegie began construction. Although the calculations are very detailed, construction costs continue to increase, causing everything to stagnate. But he won't give up without a fight. The construction project exceeded estimates many times, causing Carnegie's construction fund to quickly become empty. That was no small amount of pressure that he had to deal with. Desperate, Carnegie approached investors looking for more money to complete his life's project. You will be happy to know that the construction progress of the St. Louis Bridge is going very well. I believe that steel has a very bright future. According to my prediction, we will need another $1 million before the new year. But I am completely confident that when it is inaugurated, everyone will come to admire the bridge as the 8th wonder of the world. That's what Carnegie said to convince investors. His efforts finally bore fruit, and after 4 years, the bridge was completed. It was a truly spectacular achievement. After that success, Carnegie received many more orders for his steel, many times more than he could supply. His biggest customer was the industry he knew best, the railroads. The industry was looking to replace its bridges and rails with steel, but Carnegie could not produce enough of the new metal to fill orders. He needed to increase his production capacity, and to do that, he needed to raise more capital. He returned to his old teacher, Tom Scott. With Scott's help, Carnegie had a capital of more than $21 million at today's exchange rate. With that money, he started building his first steel factory with an area of more than 40,000 Mila squares in the suburbs of Pittsburgh. The Carnegie Steel Mill is the nation's largest, with the capacity to produce 225 tons of steel a day. With the new factory, Carnegie could provide all the steel the country needed, and steel helped him have a greater fortune than ever. But after years of rapid growth, the railway struggled with profitability. There were too many railroad companies at that time, and not enough freight to sustain them. With the scarcity of railroad goods, John Rockefeller saw an opportunity. Carnegie's teacher, Tom Scott, tried to adjust, but he could not survive without Rockefeller's oil. His career was crushed. Tom Scott could never recover. Dust then returns to dust. Andrew Carnegie lost his teacher. The first person who was not strong enough was defeated without any mercy. Andrew Carnegie was also on the verge of losing everything. Without the railway, he lost a steel buyer. Desperate to find new markets, Carnegie saw a new opportunity that he could take advantage of. Thousands of unemployed Americans flocked to cities like New York and Chicago to find work and to accommodate the growing population. That's when buildings are being built as quickly as possible. Carnegie began to see a future not in railroad tracks, but in the steel structures in the girders and rafters to build skyscrapers. The world's first skyscraper was built in Chicago. Thin brick walls surround thick beams manufactured from Carnegie steel. Over the next few years, more than 100,000 new buildings were constructed in Chicago alone. America stretched vertically by Carnegie's steel. The skyscraper boom made Andrew Carnegie one of the richest people in America, but for him, that wasn't enough. John Rockefeller's personal wealth was 7 times that of Carnegie. Carnegie believed that, to avenge his teacher, he must surpass John Rockefeller to become the most powerful person in America. And to do that, Carnegie needed help from someone else, someone more cruel than his opponent. Carnegie knew the perfect man for the job, Henry Frick. Henry Frick was a self-made billionaire at the age of 30. He was one of the largest coal suppliers in the Midwestern United States, a ruthless businessman. Frick is famous for fighting to get what he wants by any means possible. Carnegie believed that Frick would use toughness to cut costs and reduce waste, which meant making bigger profits. The decision to recruit Henry Frick is considered a genius move. Frick, through intimidation and fear, renegotiated contracts favorably with suppliers of goods and raw materials. Unnecessary costs were eliminated, while output increased in the final years of the decade. The Carnegie Steel Company made greater profits than ever before. Meanwhile, Rockefeller's oil empire continued to grow. Carnegie had to make more profits, but he would pay a price for his ambition. Greed will destroy everything he builds. To surpass the country's richest man, Rockefeller, Andrew Carnegie had to become the most profitable businessman. And to do that, he needs a weapon. He had to keep production costs extremely low, and the only way at that time was to reduce wages and increase labor hours. But Carnegie was also determined to protect his image, so he let people he hired do the dirty work of oppressing and exploiting workers. Henry Frick never cared about what others thought, but only cared about work efficiency. Carnegie doesn't like being a bad person or villain, and Frick doesn't care. Now there's only one question. How much will we make next year? Frick was appointed president of the Carnegie Steel Company. His boss went to Scotland to give Frick his acting space. Frick began stripping the workers of everything he could. He decided to keep the factory running 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. That means unacceptable working conditions. Many workers at steel mills feel that changing working conditions is necessary. They are exhausted, and they want their salary to meet their lifestyle needs. It looks like there's about to be a war here. Accidents at the factory continued to increase until death due to labor exhaustion actually occurred. Death has the power to unite downtrodden workforces, and Frick knew what was coming. Knowing that he had his boss's back, Frick threw the first punch at the workers. He declared that the Carnegie Steel Company would not negotiate and that labor quality would not improve. To fight for their rights, 2,000 steel workers created barricades in front of the factory. The war has officially begun. Henry Frick calls in the Pinkerton mercenary force. The moment Frick decided to bring in this force, the angel of death was unleashed, and there was only one way for the strike to end, and that was in tragedy. Gunshots rang out, and when the war ended, 9 workers of the Carnegie Steel Company were dead, and countless others were injured. The situation was so serious that the governor of Pennsylvania had to send troops to restore order. Then Frick was assassinated. With events such as the president being shot and workers protesting, Andrew Carnegie was facing many difficulties. He had to cut short his trip abroad and quickly return to Pittsburgh. Henry Frick survived the assassination attempt. Just 3 days after being shot and stabbed, he returned to his office at Carnegie Steel. But for boss Andrew Carnegie, this event reminded him that the chairman is now a burden. Carnegie was not happy about this. He confided to a reporter in the Pittsburgh area that if it weren't for him going abroad on business, the situation would have been different. Angered by Carnegie's betrayal, Frick even plotted and directed a slow takeover of Carnegie Steel, rotting from the inside out. But the biggest challenge to Carnegie's empire does not come from within. a new threat is emerging. J.P. Morgan, a banker who makes billions from consolidating ailing industries, buys up failing companies and brings them back to their glory days. However, currently, Morgan is interested in an invention, the electric light bulb and electric current. An invisible flow of energy heated the small filament like magic and made the filament glow. Electric light will revolutionize the world like fire or the wheel. It will change the way people live. J.P. Morgan saw the potential in this revolutionary new technology and knew that this was his opportunity to build his own fortune. That fortune will change the world forever. For many years, J.P. Morgan must live under the great shadow of his legendary father. He was desperate to find a way to make his own mark, and electricity could be that mark. Morgan is considering investing in Thomas Edison's company and in the electric light bulb invention that Edison recently developed. He even installed electric lights in his home on Fifth Avenue, New York. Morgan invited many people, including his father, to see the wonder of electric light for the first time. He knew that the show would put him at the forefront of a new industry. First of all, they don't understand how electricity works because you can't see it. So it's like magic for most people. JP's house, Morgan, was the first private residence in the world to be lit by electricity. After successfully displaying electric lighting at his home, Morgan believed that electricity could be the opportunity he had been waiting for. The chance for him to run his own company and become a pioneer like Carnegie or Rockefeller. Morgan invested Edison with the equivalent of $83 million today, and together they founded a new company, the Edison Electric Light Company. Morgan and Edison went to work immediately, transforming a building in Manhattan into the world's first power-generating center, a high-tech wonder filled with massive generators capable of lighting thousands of homes. With Edison's electricity generation up and running, the dawn of a new era is coming. The city lit up for the first time, and soon Edison's electric transmission system covered half of Manhattan. Electric streetlights on avenues and houses throughout New York crackled with electricity. Until now, John Rockefeller has been largely unchallenged in providing light to every home. But increasingly, Edison's electricity transmission system is expanding. He realized his oil empire was in danger. For every house that used Edison's electricity, John Rockefeller lost a customer. Rockefeller launched a media campaign against electricity. He described this new technology as dangerous, even deadly. From there will be a series of electric shock incidents and out-of-control fires. Rockefeller knew that if he could scare people with electricity, kerosene would continue to be the main source of light. But John Rockefeller would be only a secondary concern for Morgan. A competitor appeared, his apprentice, Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla, from a very young age, was obsessed with electricity, and when he first met Thomas Edison, he initially idolized Edison. Tesla developed a new form of electricity known as alternating current, AC. But Edison believed that AC, which had high voltages, was much more dangerous than the standard direct current he created. Edison probably considered Tesla just a young employee. After all, Edison was world famous, and Tesla was just one of many smart young men working for him. And Tesla's development of AC was no problem for Edison because he saw himself as the one who really solved it. This electricity problem and commercialize it. After many unrecognized efforts, Tesla resigned and founded his own company. Now free to pursue his own ideals, Tesla began looking for investors to fund his AC technology. He found George Westinghouse, a famous inventor and businessman. Morgan and Edison may have been the ones to light up New York. But Westinghouse and Tesla believed that the wonderful power provided by alternating current was more efficient. Tesla traveled around the country, performing with AC electrical pulses passing through his body. Successful demonstrations increased demand for Westinghouse generating stations. Those who understood the science of electricity realized that Tesla was the new giant and a formidable rival to Edison. J.P. Morgan suddenly found itself in an uncomfortable situation. He bet everything on Thomas Edison. Morgan's father had always told him to avoid competition at all costs, but now he and Thomas Edison were locked in a heated battle over which would become the dominant type of electricity in the market. Nikola Tesla has successfully developed a completely new way of generating electricity, and his technology threatens to destroy everything that Morgan and Edison built. The electrical industry currently has two opposing systems, AC and DC. This world only has room for one. If Morgan lost, he would likely lose his reputation and status. Feeling Morgan's pressure, Edison jumped into his quest to prove that direct current was the safest form of electricity. This war over electricity is the dark side of Thomas Edison. The tactic he used was to convince the public that alternating current was deadly. He began using Tesla's alternating current in a series of experiments, hoping to make people afraid of AC power. He killed animals in front of onlookers using alternating current, but nothing seemed to dampen public enthusiasm for Tesla's more powerful current. However, not long after, news of a new project reignited the fire of his desire. One project would undo Edison's experiments and restore public confidence in the electricity industry. The Niagara Falls Hydroelectric Plant project, the world's largest power plant, is under construction. Once completed, the waterfall's water will generate an incredible amount of power, about 120,000 horsepower, more than all the electricity produced across the country combined. Niagara is a historic turning point in the electricity industry. It not only showed that transmitting electricity over long distances was possible, but also practical. But the Niagara Power Company has not yet decided who will provide the electricity: DC generators from Morgan and Edison, or AC generators from Tesla. This world's largest power generating station will be a card that changes the entire outcome of the match. JP Morgan knew that this was his opportunity to create the empire he always wanted, but he also considered that getting the contract to power Niagara would require a large investment, an amount his father would never allow. Morgan was confused as he thought about his next move. Then tragedy struck. His father had a terrible carriage accident, and Junius Morgan died from serious injuries. Now JP Morgan takes charge of the Morgan dynasty. The Morgan Empire has countless business investments in railroads, real estate, shipping, manufacturing, and electricity. Dad's death meant nothing could stop Morgan anymore, and he immediately had hundreds of millions of dollars. Morgan plans to use that money to get a contract with Niagara. Morgan almost understood that to get that contract, he needed to eliminate his competitors. Tesla and Westinghouse's companies are making good progress with alternating current. They want technological superiority. They invited companies to bid on power supply contracts for the fair. Morgan thought that he and Edison would definitely get this contract, but Westinghouse had other plans. He was fiercely certain that he could light up the fair for less than a quarter of the cost of Morgan and Edison. However, with a bold, albeit unexpected move, Westinghouse got the contract and immediately started working with Tesla, connecting wires throughout the fair. Finally, on opening night, with all the eyes of the world gathered on Chicago, they flipped the switch. More than 200,000 light bulbs were immediately lit. 27 million people. Coming to the fair, people witnessed an electrified world. That had a huge impact, helping the technology spread, and it was powered by the alternating current of George Westinghouse and Nikola Tesla. The fair will forever be a testament to the safety and viability of alternating current. The impressive performance of Westinghouse and Tesla also had another result. It was decided who would supply electricity to the Niagara Falls station. An unexpected turning point. George Westinghouse won the bid for the factory's electrical project. JP Morgan was seriously brought down. His dream of building a completely new industry collapsed. His attempt to make a name for himself was ruined, but Morgan was never willing to accept defeat. JP Morgan found itself making a mistake by financing Thomas Edison. Morgan is determined to gain control of the electrical industry, and he will do it the Morgan way. Westinghouse had no choice but to comply with Morgan's demands, knowing full well that competing directly with Morgan could bankrupt him. He was forced to sign over Tesla's AC patent, but Morgan did not stop at Westinghouse. Edison's DC power was a failure. Thomas Edison is arguably the most talented inventor America has ever had, and like many other talented people, he could also make wrong choices. As big as Morgan was, there was only one way to fix Edison's power, and that was to get rid of Thomas Edison. Morgan acquired all shares of Edison Electric Company,